So, Love, Death and Robots is a 2019 Netflix anthology series of mostly animated, mostly sci-fi shorts, but doesn't really stick to its own rules, so it's a little odd. But there's certain themes that are sort of present within all of them. Well, not quite. It doesn't really double down. It's weird. It's a weird fucking show that doesn't make any fucking sense. I say show, but every episode is completely disconnected from the next. I would recommend it. It's definitely good, but there's a lot of it's very inconsistent, which I guess makes sense since each episode is made by an entirely different team of animators. So I'm just gonna go through episode by episode and tell you guys, give you my review, my first thoughts. I've just finished watching it. So this first episode is called Sunny's Edge. Now this it was an interesting choice to start off the series. So it's this episode's about basically fighting monsters who are controlled psychically by people, and they have big fights, and it's like a sport, like dogfighting or something. So this woman, she has scars because she got attacked and raped at some point, and they cut her up, and then she became a fighter. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be spoiling every single episode, pretty much. So if you haven't seen it, now is your chance. It's good, mostly. It's alright. You won't necessarily regret watching it. That's my review. You won't necessarily regret watching it. She. My problems with this episode. Firstly, the fights are sick. The fight is awesome. The big action centerpiece of this is sick. The twist was kind of meh, but alright. I found it interesting how they managed to code the robot to be a woman. Like, the robot is not the. Is this even? I don't even know if this is even from the right show. Whatever. The thing she's fighting with, the monster thing, is very clearly coded female, despite it not looking human. Really, it kind of looks a cross between the mass production Avas and the Xenomorph. It's definitely got. My problem with the first episode, I've seen people complaining that it's an episode with heavy queer theming that is written by like white guys or something, straight guys. I don't really know. I didn't look into who made it. The queer theming doesn't really matter at all. I mean, the main character is like a butch lesbian, basically. It's air. It's air. It's air. It's not really pulled off very well. But it kind of comes off as a bit of like tokenism. I don't know. It's not awful. Okay, so the next episode, this one might be my least favorite. So as you can instantly see, the animation style is completely different. This episode is centered around these three robots. Let me see if I can get to a shot where, yeah, there you go. See all three of these robots. So you got this one that's like a triangle, this more humanoid looking one, and this little guy. Now, the plot of this episode is they wander around a post-apocalyptic human city just talking about things. It's bad. It's stupid, and the reason it's stupid is because the robots just act exactly like humans, but also you can't have robots that for some reason share every single character. It might as well just be humans. There's not really any reason for them to be robots personality wise, but also the entire gimmick of the thing is like a walking around a deserted human city being like, what did the humans use this for? Oh, those humans, what a wacky bunch. Despite the fact that they were obviously programmed like humans. I mean, two of them are explicitly humanoid. This one is a descendant of baby monitors, is what he calls himself. And this one is a descendant of the Xbox. So, I don't, it's never explained what this one is. This one's clearly the most interesting one because it's the least human. Why do a story about robots when you could just, like, it doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for the characters to be robots except to have them needlessly walk around and comment on the human things. But it's not like they do anything original with it. It's the same shit we've always seen. There is a monologue into the camera about how humans destroyed themselves with hubris. Like a big monologue from this triangle looking fella. who just literally looks directly into the camera and says, the humans, they thought they were the best civilization on Earth and their hubris killed them when they drove the planet to ecological disaster. And then afterwards they acknowledge the fact that was weird, but that doesn't counter the fact that you put it in your show. Why? Stupid. Dumb and stupid. Alright. This one may be my favourite visually and my least favourite plot-wise. Also, I have to be careful to where I skip to in this because there are a lot of tits. It's kind of... The animation style is fucking sick. It's kind of like Spider-Verse-y, I guess, even though I haven't seen Into the Spider-Verse. But it's also really kind of stereotypical cyberpunk. Also, the main character spends like half of the episode just naked, so I really have to be careful with what I show here. But see, like you couldn't even at some points it doesn't even really look very stylized or animated, but it is entirely CG. It's also set in a real place. It's set in Hong Kong, I believe. I've definitely seen this first shot. Like, this is a real place. This place is a real building tower structure thingy in like Hong Kong. So it's very cliched. The plot is incredibly bad and cliched. There's like a twist at the end that doesn't even work because it doesn't do away with the fact that it was cliched, and it doesn't explain any of the sci-fi elements. Like the point of sci-fi is to bring up, it's kind of like fantasy. It's why they're lumped together. It's to talk about themes that you can't talk about and basically express thought experiments that you wouldn't be able to do without some sort of hyper technological something or other something. That's not really the entire point of sci-fi, but it's useful to have, and they never explain it. The only sci-fi really is that the city is Hong Kong. Like, there's not really much technology ever shown, if any. I mean, this is about it. You get this shot of like some billboards and stuff. That's about it. Wherever it is. Yeah, like all these fancy billboards and big tower blocks. But that is just what Hong Kong kind of looks like. And it's also a rip-off of Akira. So there is that. Literally basically a shot-for-shot recreation of Akira. There's also a bit that really looks like... Oh, the main character really looks like Chell from... what's that game? Is it Chell or Cell from Mirror's Edge? Maybe she's not called Chell. Mirror's Edge. Faith, that's her name. Why did I call her Chell? Actually, Chell kind of looks the same. They're both Asian. That's why they look the same. It's very Mirror's Edgy. The city is incredibly Mirror's Edgy. She has a similar kind of makeup swish on her eye. There's a bit in Mirror's Edge where there's this road. I'm never gonna fight. It's not gonna be here. But there's a bit in the original Mirror's Edge where you cross a bridge and there's a road, and that setting is basically exactly recreated in this thing. It's very So the plot of this is that at the beginning, this girl looks across to the apartment across from her and sees this guy strangling or shoot someone. But then the guy looks over and sees through the window that the person looking at him is actually the girl that he just shot. And then he chases after her, and the whole thing is one big chase scene. And at the end, he catches her, but she shoots him. She looks across the window and she sees him in the window where she was at the beginning, and it's so clever, and it all goes round in a circle, except that there is literally no other conclusion to this plot when you see the opening of the thing. There are only two options for this it has to be a circular thing. You know it is because it's a short film with duplicates. They're always circular things. So instantly, you know what it's going to be. And they try and throw you off the scent by not having it be a perfect circle, but by having it switch around so that now it's her doing the killing and him seeing her. But since it's never explained why there's like a loop going on, it just doesn't make, it's just baffling. It's just literally nonsense because there is no explained reason in universe why they're duplicating themselves, if it's time travel or what. Because this guy has killed someone. Like, he would know. He would know what is happening and just wouldn't chase it. It doesn't make any sense. However, that being said, there is a scene in a sex club which is the coolest shit I've ever fucking seen. I can't show it on YouTube, of course, because it's a sex club. But it is the coolest shit ever. Because there's no story and it's just the visuals, which are incredible in this short. This is probably the visually strongest short, but conceptually most boring. Maybe not the conception. There's some other pretty boring ones. But yeah, derivative. Now this one, Suits. This one kind of the exact opposite. Visually pretty weak, but conceptually I like it because it's a really straightforward story. It feels like the end of a movie, basically. Like you're watching the climax, the climactic last battle of the movie, of a movie. Like they've just jumped in right at the end, except they do give you just enough time to develop characters so that when you care about them. But most interestingly, it's rural sci-fi. It's like sci-fi set in a rural setting, arguably cyberpunk-ish. It's definitely high-tech, low-life, but in a rural setting, which that has been notoriously underrepresented for a really long time in sci-fi, and it's cool to see, and it's pulled off well. They don't go for some crazy, over-the-top, over-ambitious story. It's just like a nice, simple plot, and the twist ending kind of thing, which I won't spoil. It's not really a twist ending, it's just like a reframing of the story, or like it gives you extra information. It's a little derivative, but good. I think it works well. Okay, this is the first 2D animated fully 2D episode. This one just completely fucks everything because it's not sci-fi at all. It's just it's about Dracula. It's it's definitely it's a bit odd. It's the animation is good the whole way through. The plot is incredibly basic. There's no sci-fi concept here. It doesn't really fit with the rest of the anthology, and I don't really understand why it's there. It's well animated, and there's some cool moments. Overall, it's like kind of medium in the middle. It wasn't like amazing, but it wasn't bad either. This one, when the yogurt took over, this one was really good. I liked this one. It's literally what the title says. It's a story. It's about yogurt taking over Earth. The animation style is pretty interesting. It's got like this very like almost plasticky doll style, but with like a pretty dark story, and it has this nice narration over it that it's good. It is a good one. It's like a good story about yogurt taking over the Earth, which is suitably ridiculous and funny and like also quite existentially dark. Maybe my favorite one, maybe not. It's definitely one of the best ones in this series all around because it has pretty strong visuals, and the story is also really good. Okay, now we get to the fucking weird hyper realistic stuff. For some reason, instead of just going with the inventive animation that all the previous things had, a bunch of them at a certain point just turned to this hyper real style, which looks shit. It looks terrible. It's so bad. It's so jarring and uncanny valley. It's fucking awful. It looks like a Mass Effect Andromeda cutscene. It's terrible. It's so distracting. You can't, at any point where you might possibly be getting pulled into the story, you just see their fucking dead eyes staring at you through the screen, and you lose any sense that you might possibly care about these characters because they're so obviously like fucking terribly. It looks so bad. It's so awful. The environments look okay, but the people just look bad. It's so bad. Oh, there's also a big sex scene in this, so I have to skip that. The story of this, it kind of reminded me of that game Prey. If you ever played Prey, it's a little bit like Prey, or maybe it's not super original. Maybe a little more like Soma, like the beginning of Soma, sort of. Or it's kind of hard to explain. It wasn't amazing, and the main question I was asking myself was, if they're going with this hyper realistic style, why why would you not just have it be live action? And I was waiting for it to justify itself, because there's like a whole theme about this character not actually being herself, and that or something. And I was like, okay, they're probably going to make her have some crazy transformation scene into a weird alien creature, and that will be why they couldn't just do it in live action. But there's never a transformation scene. She just appears as the alien creature. So it's, yeah, probably the weakest episode. Also, there's like, instead of what you would normally have happen in a story like this, is there'd be like a fake out with, because she tells him like a version of the truth how they got there, and then reveals that she was lying, and something else was actually happening. But they do it 3 times. So first she's like, you're actually. So first she says you're here. And then she's like, actually, you're way further away from Earth than here, and also it's been like 100 years on Earth, so everyone you know is dead. And then she says, also, something, 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 and then the final reveal happens. Like, it's just a revelation after revelation. Just the pacing's off. It's bad. Okay, this one. So this one, as I said, there's a lot of weird stuff going on here. So this one isn't. I mean, does steampunk count as sci-fi? I was waiting for it to become sci-fi, because it starts off as like a Chinese Hong Kong kung fu thing, and then evolves into a steampunk thing. I'll just skip to the steampunk so you can see it. Spoilers, by the way. I've already said this. It evolves into a steampunk thing. I think this pulled off steampunk really well, and that's rare. Steampunk is incredibly overdone, and they actually did like some relatively new things with it. So it's set in Hong Kong, and the entire thing has this like anti-colonial message, which is, it's a bit heavy-handed. They don't particularly go into the details of colonial exploitation. It's mostly just colonists bad, which is true, but it would be nice to get like a little more, like not just about the racism of the colonists, but also about like the economic exploitation and stuff like that. Because he says like, cause he moves to the city to work on a British steam train, basically, this guy, but it's weird. I would rather, like, obviously I can't expect a Netflix show to go into a Marxist analysis of colonial exploitation of workforces in Hong Kong under British occupation, but like, you're a little heavy-handed with it, basically. But that being said, there is some cool shit, because there's a cool marriage between steampunk and like magic. There's a cool parallel drawn. You know that quote, any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. They sort of take that. That's kind of the main theme of this one, and it's pulled off pretty well. It's it's pretty good. It's pretty good, actually. I have to see, it was pretty good, but let down by janky animation, first of all. But worst for me, maybe just because of my particular music background, is the fucking audio editing was awful. Like, they'd be blending lines together. It's all super unusual to blend takes of a voice actor. You can sometimes hear it in Hollywood movies and stuff. I think I notice it more than most people, but it's pretty much standard practice. But in this, it's so poorly done. Really brings you out the story, and with the janky animation, let it down for me, because the plot is pretty strong. This one looks like a short you would see entered for a film competition of some kind. This is a, pretty good. It's pretty good. It's sort of about this guy who, I mean, look at him. You see him on screen for the first time. You see, I think this is the best version of this animation style in the thing. Like, it's not stylized to like 2D like that Cyberpunk one, and it's not actually 2D animated. It's definitely 3D and going for like a high detail 3D 3D style, Pixar-esque. But as you can see, the faces are very cartoonish. It's very Pixar-y, but it's a lot darker than Pixar. It's it's all right. It's kind of like it's satisfying seeing the guy get killed, but it's kind of like the most interesting part of this story is left out. So again, spoilers. I don't know how many times I have to say spoilers. So essentially, this guy lives in a dump. He's like a redneck guy. One day, his friend's over drinking. His friend goes out and gets eaten by a monster that is made of the trash in the dump. And then the guy attacks the monster. The monster's down. And then smash cut forwards to the monster eating the guy. This guy that looks like a twat who's come to evict him from the trash heap. But the most interesting part of the story would be the redneck guy befriending the trash monster. But they just skip past that bit, so whatever. This is the most fucking surreal thing I've ever seen in my entire life. This is the most insane thing I've ever heard. Maybe. Maybe not. It's just entirely ridiculous and very tone deaf. Deep in Afghanistan, 2 Marines with supernatural powers face a threat from one of their own kind. This is about werewolves being forced to fight for the US Army in Afghanistan. And it's also done in that really fucking awkward, hyper-realistic style, which looks fucking awful. It looks so bad. It looks so awful. The whole thing looks like a Call of Duty cutscene, but even more uncanny valley. It's just so terrible. There's like an of course they have to be discriminated against by the other soldiers, so you can have some sort of allegory for racism in there. Of course, just the most boring possible allegory for racism. Oh, I can relate to racism happening now because it's happening to white people. Oh god, fucking stupid. Meanwhile, anyway. Oh, and obviously there's a required bit in the middle where they're like, we're being forced to fight this war. We don't belong here. You know, just so that you don't think that the characters could actually be flawed in any way. The coolest thing about this is how they transform into werewolves, which I obviously can't show a clip from, but I'll try and get a still. They literally rip their own skin off, and underneath it is the werewolf form. That's cool, and something that could only be done in animation. But just fucking don't use this style of animation. Just use style, add some actual style to it, like flair, not just going for the most boring version of mocap animation. This is another mocap animation one, but with a pretty good story this time. And also, this hyper-realistic style works a lot better for machines and stuff like that than it does for humans. So, since this is mostly set with a person in a spacesuit the entire time, it's a little more forgivable, although I still wish they'd gone for a more stylized version of this style. But whatever. The plot of this is pretty fucking sick. I mean, it's a very, very basic plot. It kind of reminded me of that movie Gravity. It's quite similar, but better, maybe. So essentially, this person is going up to perform maintenance on the satellite, accidentally something hits her backpack thing with the propulsion on it, and she gets knocked off the satellite into space. And then it's a really good demonstration of how helpless humans are once you're in zero G, because there's no way to change your direction. It's just the emptiness of space, and she just has to. And her oxygen's going to run out before help arrives. And then she figures out that she can take off part of her spacesuit by creating a tourniquet around her upper arm and throw that in the opposite direction to propel her backwards. But it misses just slightly. And also, obviously, she takes off her spacesuit and her fucking arm, freezes and boils in the vacuum of space at the same time, and which is incredibly painful. And then she misses the space station with the glove throw, and she has to break off her fucking arm and throw that to propel her back to the spaceship. All of this is worth it, because when she gets back at this point in the thing, at this point, the person on the intercom says, "Hey, you need a hand up there." She's missing a hand, so it's worth it for that. But it looks ugly. They come on, like, fix that shit up. All right, this one is Fish Night. This is again absolutely unrelated to all the other. It's just completely unrelated to the other. The whole sci-fi concept of this. Also, the werewolves in Afghanistan was pretty fucking unrelated to sci-fi, so they've just sort of given up at this point. It's very strange. Um, so this one's in like Borderlands style 3D with cell shading. It looks kind of ugly. That's just because I think 3D cell shading looks kind of ugly. Maybe that's just a matter of personal taste. It's aesthetically kind of cool, but again, it doesn't really have any themes or anything. Or like, there's no satisfying conclusion to the plot or anything. It literally the plot is, what if so they get stuck, these guys get stuck in a desert because their car breaks down, and they say, and then this guy says, what if, hey, this desert used to be the sea floor millions of years ago. Hey, you know how dead people haunt houses? What if there were dead fishes haunting this place? And then turns out there's dead fishes haunting the place. And that's the plot. That's it. That's the end of it. And then this guy somehow dies. It's stupid. This one is the best of the CG, the realistic CG animated ones. It looks like it's just good enough to be relatively convincing most of the time and not distracting. Although you get moments like this one where I've just paused on where it's kind of distracting, especially this guy. The main character's face it seems to be much better animated and is very rarely distracting. In fact, sometimes it easily passes for live action. Like you don't even notice the fact that it's CG. Like this, for example. If I didn't tell you that this screenshot was a CG person, it would be kind of hard to tell. So this is much more well done. However, my big problem with this is that they explicitly, so it's set in a war, like a futuristic war, and they explicitly they make a point to not refer to the enemy that they're fighting or give any detail about them. They just say the enemy at one point. Very obviously say the enemy to ignore like who they're fighting. Which you can't, if you're going to set your story during a war and you just want to brush off the fact that you're killing people, you kind of have to address like why the war is being fought, who you're killing. You can't get away with it that easily that you can just be like, the enemy are attacking us, because they are clearly not on Earth, first of all. They're obviously not on Earth, despite being humans. And although the people they're killing are humanoid, it's never, like, shown whether they are human or alien. They just, because they're wearing suits the entire time. So, if we're not on Earth and we're fighting an alien force, you would assume that this is an invasion, but they never mention any of that or call any attention to it, and you're supposed to sort of see the humans as the good guys here, of course. So I just find that a little dodgy. Like, you don't get away with it that easily. Okay, this one is called Zima Blue. Now this is my other contender for favorite here. It's really fucking sick, but I can definitely see the character designs putting some people off here. But I don't think it definitely doesn't put me off. It's got kind of this odd misshapen character design thing going on here. Kind of like a lot of 2000s cartoons with very thick black outlines. I like it a lot. I can see that some people probably wouldn't like it, but it's fucking sick. It's about an artist. You know what? This is the only one that I'm not going to spoil at all. I'll just say it's about kind of the limits of art and also about what it means to be human. It's good. It uses sci-fi concept of like humans and machines relationships, but with inventive animation and done in a way that I've never seen before. I've never seen this particular version of that question be asked about human and machine. And it also deals with like the nature of consciousness in a sense, like how different forms of consciousness thinks about itself, and comes to the conclusion I won't spoil it, but comes to a conclusion that I find to be very satisfying and rare. So if you check out any of these, I'd say this is the one to check out. It's probably my favorite one. This one was a very jarring difference from the previous one, because the previous one is very much an artistic thing, whereas this is really just a mindless action sequence for the entire thing. There's basically no plot. It's the action is pretty good, but nothing like insanely impressive. The animation style, again, pretty cool, but nothing crazy impressive. Actually, the animation is good, I would say. It definitely looks like a kid show, but is really not a kid. There's definitely a lot of swearing and stuff in it, so it's not for kids, which is obviously Netflix. That's just how Netflix works. I saw the ending coming a million miles away. There is absolutely no deeper layer to this one. This is exactly how it seems on face value. It's just an action thing. It's not bad. For what it is, it pulls off what it's doing well, although I kind of wish it was better. This is the only live action show in the thing, which was a bit jarring to have it suddenly jump into live action after a bunch of episodes of animation. Except this is kind of animated, because there is like a bunch of animation in it. You know what? This one might also be one of my favorites. It's about a couple who move into a new house to find out that there is a civilization of miniature people living in their freezer. I just remembered that this reminds me of something. There's like a film or something where there's a miniature civilization living in someone's locker or something. I want to say it might be Spy Kids or something. I just remembered that. But this is cool. I would recommend watching this one. Again, I won't spoil the ending, but there is a very funny bit right here where these guys say, so they're like looking in, and they say, "I wonder if these people think we're their gods." And then it cuts back to these two builders sitting on a thing looking out at them, and they're just like, "I wish these guys would stop staring at us," or something like that. It's so funny. This is a weird one. This one is called Alternate Histories, and it's about Hitler. It's got this interesting animation style. It's a sort of about what would have happened if Hitler died at these different moments. Except you expect it to be like what would have happened if he died when he was a baby, and then when he was fighting in World War One, and then etc. etc. But instead, it's all takes place within the space of like half an hour. Like, what would happen if Hitler died just as he left the art university on the steps by being beaten to death by this kid's parents? And then the next one is, what if as soon as he crosses this road he gets hit by a car? The best bit about this is the end, where it's what if Hitler died because pro-Nazi people went back from the future they went back in time to defend Hitler, and anti-Nazi people also went back in time to kill Hitler, and they had a big fight. It's sick, but it's not got the same narrative to it that the other things have. It's all right. It felt like a YouTube video. And now this is the last one, also in this realistic style. It kind of, this one really felt like a game cutscene a lot. Like, it really made me want to play this as a video game. I think it's kind of similar to Metro Last Light, but like set during World War II, the siege of Stalingrad, way up in Siberia. Like around the time of the siege of Stalingrad, but way up in Siberia. The animations look pretty good most of the time, but like it's still a bit Uncanny Valley-ish, but I can understand why they did it in this case, because the location is very specific and there's a lot of big effects. Again, this one's not really sci-fi, it's more of like an occult story. So I don't really understand what is going on here anymore. Because it started off being like explicitly a sci-fi anthology series. Then you got this one, which is about Hitler, like just a bunch of like joke histories about what if Hitler died. This one's about a civilization living in a freezer. It's it's a bit ridiculous. Very inconsistent, I have to say. Also, this one uses the gimmick of a fight scene where all the music cuts out and it's just, all the sound cuts out and it's just music. Then has like a really short scene and then goes straight into another action scene with the exact same gimmick. So that's a bit weird. But overall, I guess I can recommend the series. But just be aware, it's very much inconsistent. Again, if you're gonna watch any episodes, Zima Blue is probably the best one, I think. I'd say Zima Blue is probably the best one, and The Witness is probably the best looking one, but it's also incredibly derivative. The directing is derivative of. It's kind of like a toned down Wes Anderson with a lot of like very centered shots, the sort of thing that Wes Anderson does where things very geometric and straight on, but then and then the city is obviously ripped off from like, every cyberpunk thing ever. It just looks like Akira, but worse. Kind of just looks like a modern day Hong Kong. The sex club scene though is fucking sick, and it makes it entirely worth it. It's only like a minute long, but it's so cool. Makes it worth watching. So there you go. I've just torn you apart, Love, Death and Robots. I've torn you the fuck apart. The first 2 episodes are trash. The fight scene in the first episode's good, but the actual plot of the episode's trash. This is entirely trash. I think this might be the worst one, maybe, because I hate. Why? It's just such a terrible, boring story. Oh yeah, the yogurt one is also great. And there's a lot of these trashy shitty CG ones that... Why? Werewolves in Afghanistan. Werewolf Marines. Werewolf Marines.